Well, welcome back to Cal's Barn again. Today we're going to try something a little different. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm going to try to make a cross peen body hammer for less than $10 out of that and a pry bar. I don't know if it'll work. If it doesn't work, you either won't see this video or the video will end with, well, I tried it, but it didn't work. So yeah, building my own hammer sounds a little bit crazy. Let me tell you how this started out. I was looking to buy one. Well, let me just see what I can find used. So I started looking on Facebook Marketplace and a couple other places, eBay. And everything I was finding that was not obviously junk was, oh, this is a vintage snap-on. And it looked like an old ratty thing that had tape on it. And they want, $70, $80, $90 for these things. I think some of them were over $100. No, that's not what I want to do. I can go out and buy a new one for those prices. And so I decided, what the heck? Sometimes I can be a cheapskate, but more importantly, I kind of like building my own stuff. So I thought I'd give this a try. And it worked out. Then today, as I'm trying to put this video together, I went online again and started checking for new ones to see what their prices were, and found that you could buy a curved cross peen hammer for as little as $25. $25 would have been cheap considering the hours I put into this, but hey, I had fun doing it. And I'm not even sure how good quality that $25 one would be. This one definitely has hard material on both ends of it now. So I'm still not unhappy about doing it, but take a look at the rest of the video and see how I did it. So let's see what happens. What I'm going to do, I'm guessing that this pry bar says it's made out of steel, so I got to believe I should be able to weld on it. I hope so. I'm planning to use half of this as the cross peen part on the back of the hammer. I'll cut this off. I'll probably narrow this down a little bit. And then, since the carpenter hammers are usually kind of soft, my plan is to take a piece of this and weld it to the front of the hammer. Actually, I'll probably take some of the hammer off and weld that onto it for a hardened surface and then clean and polish it. So let's see what happens. Okay, step one's done. I've been doing a little bit of cutting and grinding on the hammer. I took off the back piece. I cut it off square, and then I cut a little notch out as well. Since this is going to be thinner, I wanted that to match more closely when I put those together. So I ground that, I cut and ground that. I reduced this diameter a little bit here, and I ground some off of the face of this because I'm going to be adding more thickness when I put this on. So I cut that off, and when I cut that down, I did two things. One, it's slightly convex. I would rather it be slightly convex so that when I weld the new piece on, it's going to be touching in the middle. I don't want it concave and then it'll sound hollow when I hit something. So that, and then my other hammer, when you lay the face on a flat surface, the handle is parallel to that surface. So I did the same thing with that. Make sure the handle's parallel to that surface. So the hammer's ready, I hope. And now I'm going to cut and weld this piece on here and cut a piece out to go on the front, and we'll see how it comes out. This shows where my cut line is going to be on this. I originally was thinking that I was going to cut it right straight up the center and maybe even cut it up to here, but it turns out I need this extra width. So if I have that extra width here, I gotta stop it short of the slot, and I gotta cut this out, and then I'm going to have to trim this off square, because right now, obviously, this line is on a slight angle so that it's square, if you will, to these two sides. So this tapers out from a smaller size up to a larger size, and this is on an appropriate angle to match with that. And then this side here will have to get cut off just a little bit to match this end here. So that's what I'm going to do to put that on a hammer. And now I'm going to start cutting. Well, I got the first piece tacked in place. And I ground a 60-degree angle on both sides of this so that it's barely touching in the center, so I can make sure I get good penetration. And should be all set to weld. We'll see how that turns out. I'm pleased that it's going as well as it has so far. Now my hammer is basically done. A couple things I may change, a couple things I'm not crazy about, but basically it's done and I think it's going to work pretty well. The shape of the pry bar and the shape of the hammer were such that the slope of this doesn't come together perfectly. There's a little inflection right in here in the middle. And I could grind maybe this down, but I didn't want to take a chance on affecting the fit of the handle into that. I didn't want that to come loose. So I just left that as it was. That's not going to affect the functionality. It's just a visual issue. Remember, I did this all by hand. I did leave the weld on the back side just for a little extra strength. As I mentioned earlier, I did grind both sides so that the weld filled the whole area. I made sure that penetration would be good all the way through. On this end, you can see the area right here. I did this by hand with a die grinder, and it's not perfect, but again, that's not going to affect the functionality. And I may grind a little bit more off here just to clean up these weld areas. But again, functionally, that's not going to have any effect. To make the round piece that I put on here, what I did was I started with the pry bar and cut about 3/4 of the way around, just rough cut it with a die grinder, an angle grinder and a cutting wheel, and then used the grinding wheel on another die grinder and finessed it a little bit, got it real close. And then for this end, the last quarter or so, I just cut a V and cut it off, and then took it over to the bench grinder. And on the bench grinder, what I did was I took a socket that was the same diameter, or very close to the same diameter as what I wanted the finished part to look like, and just took a center punch and marked on my part an arc so that I could grind that down. And I couldn't, it's awkward to go all the way around, especially the material was much harder than a lot of the sheet metal I've been working with. So basically marked it part way, ground that down smooth, then I would line that up with the part that was finished, and then mark the next part and work my way around until it was done. And that worked pretty well. I got a nice round piece. And after that was done, I chamfered both the edge of the round piece that I had made and the face of what was left of the hammer. And I had ground quite a bit of the face down on this hammer because I didn't want all that extra weight out there. And then I welded them together. After welding them, things didn't stay as straight as I was hoping, so I had to grind a fair amount off to get this in the right plane again. And then I put just a slight convex curve to this so that I don't have to hit it perfectly flat. And then, of course, rounded the edges, polished it up, and it's in pretty good shape now. So what I'd like to do is change the weight a little bit. These two are about the same weight. This body hammer that I bought, it's a cheap one. In fact, I bought 4 of them, I think, 4 and 3 or 4 dollies for like $20 from somebody. They will get marked fairly easily on the surface. So this may end up being my favorite hammer because it's going to have a lot harder working surface. But anyways, the weights are actually about the same, but they feel a little heavy to me. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my angle grinder and grind some of this area out here, and maybe the sides a little more. I did grind some of these sides. I think I'm going to hit it just a little more. See if I can take another ounce or so out of this and leave it at that. So other than that, this thing is, I think, going to be a real nice body hammer. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, this is now a done deal. I ground this out just a little bit more, including some of the weld. I ground the sides a little bit more. It's not a huge difference, but I'm good with it. Cleaned them off, polished the sides. Nothing's perfect. It's not a mirror shine, but these are going to get used and scratched anyways. I didn't do anything else to this area, so that's rough looking, but it'll work nicely. It still looks a little bit like a carpenter's hammer because of the style of the handle and the attachment up here. But other than that, that should work excellently as a body hammer. I'm happy.